We're now going to make some fruit scones. Okay, so I have a large mixing bowl and a sieve, and I'm going to start by sieving together my dry ingredients. So I'm going to plop the baking powder in with the flour. And we can just start to put this through the sieve. And I can also mix the other dry ingredients, so the sugar and my pinch of salt. We'll just give this a good mix round. So that's the dry ingredients mixed together. I'm now going to mix together the wet ingredients. So I'm going to break my 2 eggs. And they can be mixed, just making sure there's no shell or anything, in with the milk. So we can put in the butter, which is in little cubes, and what we're going to do with the butter is just rub it in to the flour. So just nice and lightly break the butter up into small pieces, and we're just going to coat the butter with the flour. So we want this to resemble sort of breadcrumbs, ground almonds, that sort of texture. And then once we've broken the butter down, using our fingertips, and actually start to rub this in, so nice and lightly using some air, so just breaking it down into little bits, coating it with the flour and rubbing it in. So I think we're about there. So just to have a final look to make sure that the butter has been completely incorporated and is now surrounded, broken down and surrounded by the flour. So I'm now going to make a well into the centre of the mix, and we can scatter around our sultanas. And I'm going to pour the milk and egg into the flour and butter, and we'll just start to gently incorporate this to make it into a paste. So the dough is now nicely come together. So the next stage is that we're going to rest this. So I'm now going to cover this and let the dough rest away from direct heat, but not necessarily in the fridge, so at ambient temperature for 10 to 15 minutes. So the scone mix has been resting for about 15 minutes, so it's now ready to roll. We can take the mix and just gently transfer from the bowl onto the board. And just using our rolling pin nice and lightly from side to side, making sure we can move it. It's not sticking. And we're going to roll this to within about 12 to 15 millimetres thick, so just over 1 centimetre. So I'm just going to check. I think it's about the right level. Now if we're quite delicate with this, the offcuts we can roll again, and we should be able to produce a secondary batch of scones without any problems. But first of all, we're going to start cutting. So close to the edge as possible, we're going to cut the scones. So I think we should be able to get between 18 and 20 scones from this mix. Okay, so now carefully I'm just going to transfer the scones onto the baking tray, nice and gently. But here I have 16 scones ready to bake. So the next thing we're going to do is give them a light egg wash just on the top to give a glaze, and then we're going to just let them sit for 5 minutes just to acclimatise and relax the gluten before placing into the oven at 200 degrees for between 10 and 15 minutes. So here we have our finished scones. They've been baked, left to cool on a cooling rack, and we've just dusted the tops with a little bit of icing sugar. Now it's traditional that scones form part of a cream tea. So for example, with these scones you would normally serve with some clotted cream, maybe some butter and some strawberry jam. I would recommend that they're eaten on the day that they're baked, but if you are going to store them, wrap them tightly, store them in the freezer, and then on the day that you defrost them, use them that day. So there you have it, a batch of scones.